I didn't notice the clock ticking. I was too focused on the cold gel on my belly, the faint flicker of my baby's heartbeat on the ultrasound screen. But then I saw her, my doctor. Someone I barely knew, freeze. Her hands trembling as she looked at the paperwork instead of the monitor. My husband's name. Printed neatly at the top, Mrs. Wilson. "I need to speak with you privately," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She led me into her office, closed the door, locked it. My heart pounded so hard I was sure she could hear it. My mind spun. What was wrong with my baby? Was something happening to him right now? She began, taking a deep breath, "I need you to leave your husband today. Before you go home. Get a lawyer first." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" Her face was pale. "What I'm about to show you, it will change everything you think you know about your marriage." I should have panicked. I should have screamed, but something in her voice made me listen, and as I watched her lay out the documents, my stomach dropped. My life, the one I'd built with him, the one I thought was mine, crumbled in an instant. "I'm Daphne Wilson. I'm 32. I work as a marketing director in Connecticut. I inherited money. Yes, but never flaunted it. It was security, not identity. That's why I never noticed the way he moved through my life, carefully, quietly, until he'd positioned himself perfectly. I met Grant Mercer 4 years ago at a charity gala. Charming, attentive, interested in my life, not my money. Or so I thought. My mother warned me. His smile doesn't reach his eyes, she said. I ignored her. I wanted to believe in love, in normal, in the life I'd always imagined. We married. We tried for a child. And for months I thought we were happy. Until that appointment. Until Drive Brennan's hands shook. Until I realized the man I had loved, trusted, and defended even to my own mother might have been lying to me from the very beginning. I didn't know it yet. But by the time I left that office, I had made a choice. I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to be the victim. And I had no idea how far I'd have to go to take him down. Next time, I'll tell you about the first signs that everything wasn't what it seemed, and how his smile, the one I trusted, had been a mask from day one. Recap: yesterday I left Dr. Brennan's office with a sinking feeling that everything I believed about my marriage might be a lie. I didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear: I couldn't ignore it. The first thing I noticed when I got home was how quiet the apartment felt. Too quiet. Grant usually had the TV blaring, music playing, some podcast filling the background noise. But today, silence. He was in the kitchen when I walked in, leaning against the counter, sipping his coffee. "Hey," he said casually. That smile, the one that used to make me melt, now felt like a challenge. Like he was daring me to question him. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're home early." He shrugged. "Just got back from a meeting." "Why?" I didn't answer. I wanted to, but words felt heavy, dangerous. Instead, I started unpacking groceries, pretending nothing had changed, but my eyes kept drifting to the sideboard. To the folder of papers Dr. Brennan had shown me. I'd left it hidden under my coat in the car, and then it hit me, the first tiny crack in the life I thought I knew. Grant's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, smiled, and typed something quickly before pocketing it again. Something about the way he moved, the way he tried to hide it, it made my chest tighten. A small, irrational panic set in. Why hadn't I noticed this before? Why had I trusted him so blindly? I forced myself to remember Dr. Brennan's words. It will change everything you think you know about your marriage. I decided to test him carefully. You've been busy, huh? A lot of late nights lately, I asked, casual, as if I were joking. He looked at me calm. Nothing unusual. Work stuff. You know how it is, but I did know. Or at least I thought I did. And deep down, I knew his answers didn't match what I had seen, the flicker of anxiety on his face, the tension in his fingers. He was hiding something. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts were a storm: betrayal, disbelief, shock. I tried to imagine what kind of man would do this and why. My hands shook as I reached for the folder in my purse. And that's when I realized the real fight wasn't just about my heartbreak. It was about revenge. About reclaiming everything he thought he could take from me. But I didn't know yet how far I'd have to go. Or how dangerous it could get. Next time, I'll tell you about the first clue that made me realize this wasn't just deception, it was manipulation from day one. And why even the people closest to me might not be trustworthy. The next morning, I decided to go through my old messages, emails, texts, anything that might give me a hint. I didn't want to confront him yet. I needed proof, something undeniable, before I let myself believe my own fears. Scrolling through my phone, I froze on a text from last month. It was from an unknown number. Short, casual, almost innocent. She doesn't need to know yet. Keep it quiet. My heart stopped. I stared at the words, rereading them over and over. Who was she, and why did Grant need to keep it quiet? I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so badly I dropped the phone. The screen cracked slightly on the edge of the table, perfectly symbolic. I thought bitterly. Everything in my life felt like it was shattering, piece by piece. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront him right then, but something inside me whispered, wait. Don't act rashly. Find out the full truth first. I needed to see the folder from Dr. Brennan again. The papers she had shown me, the names, dates, details, they were pieces of a puzzle I wasn't ready to put together yet. That afternoon, I drove back to her office. She was waiting, calm, almost as if she'd expected me. You came back, she said, her voice quiet but steady. I need to understand, I said, clutching the folder like a lifeline. I need every detail, she nodded. Some truths are heavy. They hurt more than lies ever could. Are you ready for that? I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. I was ready to see everything, even if it destroyed me. And then she handed me a photo. One single, simple image, Grant, smiling, arms around someone I didn't recognize. But the look in his eyes wasn't the playful, loving one I knew. It was careful, calculated, like a man rehearsing a role he wanted the world to believe. I swallowed hard. My blood ran cold. The betrayal I had feared was no longer just a shadow in my mind. It was real. And deep down, I realized this was only the beginning. The first clue had been revealed, but the real story, the part that would make my life unrecognizable, was still hidden. Next time, I'll show you the first step I took to uncover his secrets. And why the people I trusted the most started looking like strangers. That night, I stayed awake in the dark, scrolling through my memory of the past months, every little inconsistency, every unexplained trip, every suspicious text. They suddenly formed a faint outline of something bigger, something I hadn't wanted to see before. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to find out everything, not guesses, not hints, everything. I started small. I checked old emails, bills, receipts. Patterns emerged, late-night transactions, reservations for places I didn't know existed, small deposits into accounts I had never seen. My chest tightened. How had I missed this for so long? How had I trusted him completely while he quietly built this other life? Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Can you meet tonight?" the voice whispered. It was from someone claiming to know about Grant. "There's more you need to see, something he's hiding. And it's bigger than you think." I hesitated. My instinct screamed danger, but the other part of me, the part fueled by betrayal and anger, said yes immediately. I couldn't stop now, not when I was this close. That evening, I parked near the old cafe Grant used to say he didn't like. The streets were empty, and a cold wind blew across my face. Every step felt heavier than the last. Then I saw her. A woman, mid-30s, cautious eyes, hands tucked into her coat. She waved me over. "You're asking questions," she said. Her voice was calm, almost a calm. "You shouldn't have. But now that you're here, I'll tell you what I can." I leaned in, heart pounding. "Grant, he's not who you think," she said. "And he's been planning something for months. Something for her. And you, well, you're part of it too, whether you know it or not." I felt like the floor had dropped from beneath me. My voice caught in my throat. Who's her? "What do you mean I'm part of it?" She shook her head slowly. "You'll see. But not yet. You have to keep watching. One wrong move, and he'll know you're onto him." Her words hung in the air like a warning. And in that moment, I realized my life, my marriage, my trust, everything I had built was slipping through my fingers. And the real nightmare hadn't even started yet. I'll show you the first dangerous step I took to uncover Grant's secret life and why that night changed everything I thought I knew about him. I started with the easiest thing, his phone. He'd always left it on the counter while he showered or worked in the garage, thinking I'd never peek. Tonight I was ready. My hands shook as I unlocked it, the small glow of the screen lighting up my face in the dark kitchen. There it was, messages, photos, locations. At first, I tried to convince myself that nothing was unusual. But then I saw a name I didn't recognize, and suddenly, the calm, safe life I had lived with Grant began to fracture. "Meet me tonight. I need you to see it before she does," one message read. Another photo showed Grant with a woman I didn't know, smiling, close. Like they shared secrets I would never be part of. My stomach turned. How long had this been going on? How many lies had I unknowingly swallowed? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I traced every detail I could find, the places, the dates, the times. Patterns emerged. He was meticulous. Every meeting was planned, every trip accounted for, but only in his hidden world. And somehow, he had been hiding this entire life right in front of me. The next day, I followed him. I pretended to run errands, keeping a careful distance. My heart pounded as I saw him pull into a small, unremarkable building tucked between a dry cleaner and a cafe. He didn't notice me. He never noticed me when he was here. Through the window, I saw him laughing with that woman. But it wasn't just casual laughter, it was intimate, conspiratorial. My chest tightened, my hands were cold. Betrayal wasn't just a word anymore, it was a living, breathing thing sitting right there, mocking me. I backed away before he noticed me. My mind raced. I couldn't confront him yet, not without knowing everything. I needed the whole picture, every detail, before I made a move. But even as I walked back to my car, a thought gnawed at me. The woman at the cafe had said I was part of it. What did she mean? How could I be tangled in Grant's secret life without even knowing it? And in the back of my mind, one terrifying possibility whispered. By the time I understood, it might already be too late. I'll tell you how I uncovered the first shocking truth about Grant's double life and why it was far worse than anything I could have imagined. I spent the entire morning replaying the images in my mind, trying to force them into something understandable, but the pieces just didn't fit. Grant had always been careful, meticulous. But somehow, I felt like I was seeing the cracks for the first time. By mid-afternoon, I was at his office under the pretense of dropping off some papers. He was distracted, typing away, unaware I had a subtle plan forming. I needed to see his files, even briefly, just to get a clue. My pulse thumped in my ears as I reached for the drawer where he kept his personal documents. It was heavier than I expected. Inside, there were receipts, letters, and a small, black notebook. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The writing was neat, controlled, but the content chaos. Names I didn't recognize, codes, dates. There were references to people, transactions, and places I'd never heard of. One line jumped out. Ensure she never suspects. Everything falls into place by June. My stomach sank. June. That was only a few weeks away. Everything falls into place. What exactly? I kept reading, each line more horrifying than the last. Plans, movements, careful manipulation. It wasn't just about another woman, it was bigger. And I was trapped right in the middle of it. Completely oblivious until now. I slammed the drawer shut and tried to steady myself. How could someone I loved, trusted, someone I thought I knew entirely, be capable of this? The betrayal felt like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I left his office quietly, pretending to be calm, but inside, a storm was brewing. I couldn't confront him, not yet, but I needed a strategy. I needed proof. I needed to understand the full scope before taking a step that couldn't be undone. And then it hit me. There was a pattern here. Everything in that notebook pointed to certain dates, certain locations. I could track him, anticipate his next moves. If I played this right, maybe, just maybe, I could turn the tables before it was too late. As I got into my car, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I knew one thing for certain: the Grant I thought I married was gone, and the real man behind the mask. He was about to meet someone he underestimated. I'll show you how I followed him to a secret meeting that changed everything. And the first shocking truth about who he really was. That night, I waited in my car 2 blocks away from his favorite cafe. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I wasn't just following him, I was entering a world I had no idea existed, one that felt like it could swallow me whole. Grant arrived precisely at 7:03 p.m., looking composed, casual, smiling at people I couldn't see clearly. He stepped inside the cafe with someone, a woman. Not just any woman, but someone who carried an air of authority, the kind that made you realize she wasn't there for small talk. They sat in a corner, speaking in hushed tones, leaning close. I tried to focus on their words, catching fragments through the cafe window. Everything is set for June. She can't know. My stomach dropped. June again. Everything was moving toward that date, and I was right in the crosshairs. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos, careful to remain unseen. Then something even worse happened. Grant pulled out a folder from his briefcase. I could see papers, diagrams, and a list of names. One of them, my name. I froze. It couldn't be real. But it was. My own name, written neatly, methodically, like a target. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the woman leaned back and laughed softly, a sound that cut through me like ice. She suspects nothing, not yet. My hands shook, my chest tightening, fear, betrayal, anger, they all collided at once. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated, pre-planned, dangerous. And I had been blind, trusting, living in a fantasy that had never existed. I stayed until they left, following them carefully through dimly lit streets. Every step I took felt like walking on a wire stretched across a canyon. I had no plan, only instinct. When they finally parted ways, I drove home, my mind racing. I realized one terrifying truth. I couldn't confront him directly, not yet. I needed leverage, I needed control. And most of all, I needed patience. Because revenge, real revenge, was going to require more than anger. It was going to require strategy. And I was just beginning to learn the rules of the game. I'll show you the first move I made to take control, and the first time Grant realized I wasn't as clueless as he thought. The next morning, I didn't rush. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling in front of me, staring at the notebook I had taken from his apartment. Every page was a puzzle piece, but the full picture was still blurry. I flipped through it carefully, noting times, dates, names, and locations. Then I smiled. Not the small, polite smile I used to give him. A real smile, the kind that comes from knowing you finally have a weapon. The first move was simple but cruelly effective. I didn't confront him. I didn't threaten him. I created small cracks. Little hints that I knew more than I let on. Anonymous messages, missed calls at strange hours, slightly off comments in public, things that would make him twitch, make him doubt. The day I sent the first email, I waited for his reaction like a predator waiting for prey. Within an hour, his usual calm, composed demeanor began to falter. I saw it in his posture, in the way he checked his phone twice too many times during meetings. It felt intoxicating. The realization that I could unsettle him without touching him, without showing my hand, was a kind of power I had never known before. But the thrill came with a warning: one wrong move, and everything could collapse. I had to be careful, patient, methodical. Every step forward had to be calculated, precise, like walking a chessboard where each piece could strike back. That night, I watched from a distance as he returned to the same cafe. This time, there was no woman waiting, but I noticed a flicker of anxiety in his eyes, a subtle, twitching tension. He knew. He knew someone was watching, and that knowledge made him vulnerable. I whispered to myself, barely audible in the dark, "You think you're untouchable, but you're not." And for the first time in months, I felt the taste of satisfaction, a small, quiet triumph. The beginning of the end for him had already started, and I was the one holding the key. I'll show you how I started pulling the threads of his life apart, piece by piece. Well, he remained oblivious, and the first hint that he might start fighting back. The next week was a careful dance. I stayed invisible, but I watched everything. Emails he thought were private, files he considered secure, I had eyes on it all. And then, the first real crack appeared. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no confrontation. It was in the quiet moments, in the way he hesitated before sending a message, in the tiny slip of his calm fade. I saw it happen in a cafe where he met one of his closest colleagues. His voice was a shade too sharp, his laughter a fraction too forced. He was nervous. And then came the first hint that he suspected me. A misplaced glance. A phone call he didn't return. A momentary freeze, like he was seeing shadows that weren't there. That freeze was my victory. Small but telling. I began leaving little breadcrumbs, emails with missing pieces of information, files that were slightly altered, things that made him doubt his own memory. Each one was carefully crafted to make him question his competence, his control, even his sanity. One evening, I saw him standing by his car staring at his phone, muttering under his breath, "Who, how did?" His words were fragmented, incomplete, but the panic behind them was clear. He didn't know me yet, but he felt me. He felt the invisible weight of someone unraveling his life from the shadows. It was intoxicating, but I reminded myself to be patient. My goal wasn't humiliation, at least. Not yet. It was precision. Every move had to hurt just enough to make him squirm, but not so much that I lost control of the narrative. That night, I sat with my notebook open, retracing my steps, planning the next layer of the web, and as I wrote, a thought struck me. This was more than revenge now. It was art, a slow, deliberate dismantling of someone who had never once considered the consequences of their actions. And deep down, I knew he was about to fight back, but the truth was, he was already behind. I had anticipated his every instinct, every reaction, and when he finally made his first move, it would be too late. I'll take you inside the first confrontation, the moment he begins to realize someone is deliberately dismantling his life, and the first spark of fear in his eyes. It happened on a Thursday. He was late for a meeting, flustered, scanning his inbox like a man hunting ghosts. I watched from the corner of the office cafe, pretending to scroll through my phone, while every muscle in me tightened with anticipation. Then he saw it, a single email, subject line empty, attachments he didn't recognize. He froze, eyes widening as he clicked it open. The message was brief, almost innocuous. "Do you really know what's yours?" His reaction was immediate, a sharp intake of breath, a glance around the cafe, his fingers trembling just slightly over his phone. I swear I could see the panic starting to creep into his bones, the mask he wore so carefully every day, the arrogant, untouchable mask, was beginning to crumble. He stormed out before the meeting even started. I didn't follow. I let him flounder in his fear, watched from a distance as he muttered to himself, pacing the sidewalk, checking his phone, deleting emails, and starting over. His world had shifted, and he didn't even know how or why. That night, I received a text from him. Short, disjointed, almost desperate. "Stop. Whoever you are. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but I'm watching." I smiled, the first acknowledgement. He was finally aware, not of me, not yet, but of the fact that something or someone was dismantling the life he had thought untouchable. But here's the thing, he had no idea he was still one step behind. Every reaction, every attempt to regain control, was exactly what I had anticipated. Every panic-filled move only made my next step easier. As I closed my laptop that night, I thought about the path ahead. The careful layering, the psychological precision, the way each move would escalate. He had taken the bait and now he was playing my game without even realizing it. I'll show the moment the first real stakes hit. He starts to lose control in public, mistakes pile up, and the first cracks in his reputation begin to show. The game is no longer quiet, it's starting to roar. Monday morning was worse than I expected. I watched him from across the street as he entered the office building, coffee in hand, suit impeccable, smile forced, but the way he moved, jittery and uneven, betrayed him. Something was off. By midday, whispers had started, not loud, not obvious, but enough to make him pause mid-conversation. Colleagues exchanging glances, a subtle shift in tone when he spoke. Nothing concrete yet, nothing public, but the seeds of doubt were growing. And then it happened, the first public slip. He was giving a presentation in a conference room packed with clients. Everyone's eyes on him. Normally, he commanded attention with ease. Charisma polished to a mirror shine. But today, words stumbled, numbers didn't add up. A misstatement on a key contract sent murmurs through the room. I wasn't there inside the room, but I knew. I could feel it from the way he texted me later, short, frantic. Desperate, he couldn't figure out what was happening. His reputation, the carefully constructed pedestal, was starting to crumble in real time. That night, he confronted me, or at least tried. I wasn't expecting him. He appeared at the restaurant I'd been meeting a friend at, cornered me by the bar. Eyes dark, voice low, "Who are you?" "What is this?" I sipped my drink calmly, meeting his glare without flinching. "You'll see soon enough," I said. That was all. No threats, no explanations. Just the promise of consequences. He stormed out, rage simmering beneath his controlled facade. I smiled, because I knew he was no longer untouchable. And that was the first real victory, the first moment he realized he could lose. But here's the twist. The stakes are just starting to rise. He thinks these are minor cracks, temporary slips, but I'm already several moves ahead. His panic, his overreactions, every desperate attempt to reclaim control only digs him deeper into the trap I've laid. Things escalate further. Personal relationships he thought solid start to fray. Trusted allies begin doubting him, and the first hint of my true identity edges closer just enough to make him fear it might be someone he knows, someone close. By Wednesday, his phone was blowing up, messages from clients, partners, and even his assistant, all tinged with doubt. He tried to mask it, but even I could see it, those tiny moments when his hand trembled, when he laughed too sharply at a joke, when he double-checked every number on a contract. He didn't understand why things were unraveling so fast, but I did. Every slip, every whisper, every subtle sabotage I'd seeded had a rhythm, a pattern only I could control. And the beauty was, he didn't know where it came from. He didn't know who was pulling the strings. That evening he called me. Voice tight, barely controlled. "What's happening?" "This, all of it." "Who?" I cut him off gently. "Relax. Just pay attention. You'll see soon enough." It was enough to make him pause, enough to make him obsess. He couldn't stop thinking about me, or at least, he thought he shouldn't. That obsession made him sloppy. That obsession would be his undoing. And then came the first real fallout, something I hadn't planned but welcomed like a gift. A trusted friend of his, someone he confided in daily, confronted him. Questions, doubts, accusations barely disguised as concern. He stammered, tried to reassure, tried to explain, and failed. By the end of the night, he sat alone in his apartment, staring at the city lights, sweating, heart racing. He was starting to understand that the world he built on charm, lies, and manipulation was cracking. And no one, not his colleagues, not his friends, not even his carefully curated social media image could save him now. But here's the thing, this is still just the beginning. He senses a storm coming, but he doesn't know its magnitude. I've been patient, restrained, quiet, letting him unravel at his own pace. And that's when revenge is sweetest, when they believe they're still in control. The personal stakes rise. People he loves or thinks he does begin to question him. Trust starts slipping like sand through his fingers. And the first real hint of my identity starts to creep closer. Enough to make him paranoid, desperate, and dangerous. I spent the next week quietly, almost like a ghost moving through my own home. The baby kicked lightly. a steady reminder that life kept going even as I navigated betrayal, fraud, and the weight of planning my revenge. Every moment with my child felt precious, grounding me in a reality Grant could never touch. I reviewed every document, every note, every shred of evidence again and again. It was almost comforting, in a strange way, knowing that each page was a brick in the trap I was about to spring. I wasn't just seeking justice, I was reclaiming my life, my peace, and the narrative that Grant had tried to hijack. There was a quiet thrill in the planning. I rehearsed conversations, anticipated lies he might try to spin, mapped out every interaction with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. And in the background, I watched him carefully. Through subtle observation rather than confrontation, he was tense. For the first time in our marriage, the charming, unflappable man I'd known was cracking. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Rosalind, my investigator, had more intel. She had followed Grant for days and uncovered something deeper, his last few desperate attempts to cover his gambling debts. One payment in particular tied him directly to a loan shark whose reputation made him someone I did not want anywhere near my life. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. I breathed in slowly, hand on my stomach. The baby moved, almost as if sensing my resolve. I whispered under my breath, "You have no idea what's coming, Grant." The next step was delicate. Timing was everything. One wrong move, one hint of panic, and the illusion could crumble. I needed the stage, the audience, the perfect reveal, because this wasn't just about exposing him. It was about showing everyone the truth, in a way he could never manipulate again. The party was set. Invitations had gone out under the guise of celebrating the baby. Innocuous, joyful. Grant was blissfully unaware that the walls of the house, the audience in the garden, and even the champagne he so proudly raised were part of a meticulous plan that would leave him exposed in front of everyone he cared about or thought he did. I stood in my room that evening, looking at the nursery, soft pastel walls, tiny clothes folded neatly, the crib assembled with love. My stomach tightened, not from fear, but from anticipation. Justice, I realized, had a quiet, almost patient heartbeat, and mine was ready to strike. And just as I was about to leave the room, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "He knows you're onto him. Be careful, tonight will change everything." I smiled. Perfect. The morning of the celebration arrived like any other, bright and deceptively peaceful. Sunlight spilled across the estate, catching the roses and hydrangeas my grandmother had planted decades ago. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Grant was in his element, of course. Smiles, handshakes, camera-ready expressions. He glanced at me, and I returned the same sweet, unsuspecting look I'd perfected over weeks of careful rehearsals. He had no idea, not a clue. I guided guests toward the back lawn where the speeches would happen, subtly positioning my allies, Rosalind near the fountain, the lawyer close to the bar, and Molly discreetly by my side. Even Derek Sykes had arrived, nervous but resolute. Every piece was in place. When it was time, I took the microphone, heart steady, voice calm. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "This is a celebration of life, family, and truth." The words landed softly at first, then carried further. I could feel eyes turning toward me. Curiosity piqued. Grant's smile faltered slightly. "Just a moment," I thought. "Patience." I held up the first document. "These are the original records from our IVF treatment," I said, letting the word original hang in the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd, faces shifted, questions forming silently in their eyes. Then I dropped the bomb. Grant Mercer bribed clinic staff, paid $30,000, and replaced his sperm with that of a donor without my knowledge or consent. All while pretending to be a loving husband and father-to-be. The world seemed to pause. The champagne glass in his hand trembled. His face turned pale, and for the first time, I saw fear, not just shock, but genuine terror. Molly stepped forward. I am the nurse he paid. I have documentation. I've given my statement to the authorities, Derek added, voice steady despite nerves. I was told it was a private arrangement. I had no idea it was part of a fraud. Rosalind and my lawyer coordinated quietly, handing folders, showing evidence, watching as Grant tried and failed to craft lies. Each document, each receipt, each photograph cut through his story like a scalpel. Then the officers arrived. Grant Mercer, the first, said, voice calm, "You are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement." The sound of handcuffs clicking was almost musical to me. I looked at the man I once loved, standing helpless in front of every person he wanted to impress. His parents' expressions were a mix of disbelief and sorrow, and his colleagues' eyes widened as the truth finally sank in. I turned to my mother. She smiled, quiet and proud. "You did it, sweetheart." I placed my hand on my belly. My child kicked softly. A reminder that innocence survives even in the face of betrayal. My world was restored. Stronger, wiser, and more grounded in what truly mattered. Grant Mercer would spend years paying for his choices. I would raise my child in love, safety, and truth. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe fully, freely. I had my revenge not in anger, not in destruction, but in calm, measured justice. And that, I realized, was far more satisfying than anything he could have imagined. The past was ashes. The future my own. And that's how the truth finally came out, how betrayal turned into justice. Remember, no lie lasts forever, and karma has a way of finding its mark. If this story gave you chills, hit like, share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about anger, it's about reclaiming your life.